Greetings family, Dr. David Roots here, the Roots Chemist. 13 foundational tenets of Rastafari. Yes? The title of this video is 13 foundational tenets of Rastafari. A topic very dear to my heart. Very important video. I had some hesitation in wanting to do this video. Why? Because I believe that there are certain things that we should keep sacred, things that are kept and passed down only through the oral tradition. And with the way the world is going, the connectivity of the world, there's lots of things in our culture that we have now given to the world, and a lot of our own people have forgotten about it themselves. But there are two reasons why I said for this particular topic, and hopefully I'm going to do a series of videos on teachings on this topic, is that two reasons. The first reason is that our young people are accessing social media before they even do things like traveling. They are traveling the world through social media. So if we don't put out our information in the channels and the frequencies that they are able to access it, then they're going to be bombarded with other people's information and other sets of information that might not give them the same strength that our teachings can give them. Number two, the internet, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, all of these things are modern today. But in 1,000 years' time, these things are going to be the ancient information sources, just like the papyrus of ancient Kemet, ancient Egypt, just like the scrolls, the Dead Sea Scrolls, the hieroglyphics. Those things are ancient forms of communication to us, but at the time they were modern forms. And so when our young people look back generations after generations from now, I want to ensure that certain sacred information, cultural information that only can be delivered by us is out there for them to access. And I said to myself, even though there's a lot of distractions out here, this is one of the hearts of Babylon, lots of Babylonian people walking around me. Even when I started doing the video, all of a sudden out of the blue, a tractor came and started mowing the grass in the park, Regardless of the distractions, that just shows me how powerful this teaching is and why I'm going to continue with it. So, the title of the video is 13 Core Tenets of Rastafari, okay? Now, when we're talking about Rastafari, we are not talking about any new world, media-driven, entertainment-driven idea of some sort of religious concept, some sort of entertainment-based concept, okay? We're talking about the roots and the foundational seeds of Rastafari. And of course, that starts with Jamaica, that starts with Rastafari himself, Emperor Haile Selassie I, and the core principles that the elders, the founders within that awakening and that movement, which, yes, stemmed out of Jamaica, but was birthed from the DNA, the ancient DNA that those founding fathers within the Caribbean carried. Okay, so we're talking about the authentic indigenous understanding of Rastafari. All right, and so this is a teaching for the young people that might have that spark, because within Rasta, there's a saying that says, 1 in every city, 2 in every family, meaning many of us, many other young people out there might have that spark in their heart, that dreadlocks in their heart, but they're looking for information, quality information, real information, roots information that can help to guide them on their way. And I hope this can reach out to those young people, those African youths out there at home or abroad, in strengthening up themselves towards what really Rastafari is about, not what you see in media and what you see in the songs and all of that. Okay, so the 13 core principles, what are they? Excuse me if you see me looking down, I might look down at my notes from time to time. As well as for the noise, hopefully you can hear me clearly out there. So the first principle, and these are not in any specific order, okay? These are not in any specific order, hierarchical order. I wrote them down as they came to mind, all right? With the number 13, of course, being significant within the supreme mathematics. So the first principle within Rastafari is love, okay? Now, this is one of the most misunderstood principles, okay, within Rastafari, because we're not talking about kumbaya love. We're not talking about agape love, which is, you know, brotherly love. We're not talking about that. Within Rasta, we have a saying that's called one perfect love, and that love is signified by fire, okay? So love is truth, and truth is love. If you love somebody, you will tell them the truth, although the truth might hurt. Within the black community, we might say tough love, okay? We might call it tough love, right? So one of the first principles within Rastafari core tenets is that love, which means truth, okay? Yes, love for one and all, love for humanity, but it is not this soft love, which means people read about in the Bible, oh, if someone hits you on the cheek, you turn the cheek so they can slap the other side. No, that's not what Rastafari deals with. We deal with love, which is to say one perfect love, which is to say the fire, which is truth. Okay, if you love somebody, you'll tell them the truth. And of course, the most important love is the love that you have for yourself, and the love that you have for creation, and the love that you have for Creator. Okay, the source, the one source. And that comes from the love that we developed for Rastafari in terms of the works that he did, which awakened many to this particular liberty. Okay, so the first core tenet is love. The second core tenet is what Rastafari people call I-tal. Okay, so I-tal is short for natural or vital. More so it's short for vital, because within Rasta we have something that we say word, sound, power. So when you utter a word, you utter a sound, and that sound has specific power within the word, within the sound. Okay, so rather than say vital, okay, Rasta say I-tal, because Rasta deal with the I and I. Okay, so I-tal relates to natural, it relates to nature. This is why within Rastafari we look at natural way of living, which includes the use of natural medicine and natural foods. So underneath this, for example, would be the emphasis of Rasta on herbs, including cannabis, okay, within its natural form, okay. So that concept of I-tal is extremely important. It forms the foundation of how Rasta people try to live, okay? So I-tal is vital. So those are the first two. So we had love, one perfect love, and we had I-tal, all right? Now, the third core tenet of Rastafari is militancy, okay? So, militancy, what do we mean by militancy? Wow, militancy comes from the word, obviously, military. And it refers to what we see on the Ethiopian flag, which is the Lion of Judah, which we have behind me, okay? The Ethiopian flag here. Spin it around. Militancy. which is a banner, okay? It's not really a flag, it's actually a banner, all right? And militancy reflects a certain way of being that Rastafari himself always carried himself militantly, okay? Meaning protection for first the nation, protection for second the community, third the family, and of course the individual. And when you look at pictures of Rastafari, you're gonna see him in many military garbs, military uniforms, to represent the militancy that's necessary for us as a people and for Rasta in general. Militancy refers to how you move, okay? How you carry yourself, how prepared you are to protect yourself on a practical level as well as a spiritual level. All right? So, that's the third tenet, important tenet of Rastafari. And if you look at the elders within Rastafari from the foundational times, not what you'll see now, many of them dressed in a military style, looking to emulate the example set by His Imperial Majesty. So they wear what we call khaki military uniform with the lapels. They would have certain badges that represent, they'd have a certain belt that represents the militancy, okay, being a soldier for your army, all right? So militancy is a very important. Rasta carry themselves militant. They don't carry themselves as a joker, as a clown. Hence why a lot of the stuff you see in the media, hence why a lot of the people that claim to come underneath the banner of Rastafari, you can clearly tell that they're not Rastafari because of a lack of militancy. Number 4, related directly to militancy, is what we call order. Okay? What we call order. Now, Rastafari believes and carries himself with a specific order. Now, when we talk about order, we're not just talking about how things are lined up in a hierarchical position. What we're talking about is how people are organized. I just have a truck coming across, so I'm just gonna stop for a minute. Seems like they don't want me to make this video today. Also seem to be joined by a little visitor behind me. So let's try to continue the conversation. We're really in Babylon now. Got helicopters flying around, trucks, tractors, and all sorts of visitors, yeah? But that shows you the importance of this particular video, all right? So, we were talking about order before I got distracted. Now, the order that we refer to is the order that you see within nature. Okay? Within nature, things have a natural order. The sun comes up, the sun goes down, the tides come in, the tide goes out. The moon has its cycles, the woman has her cycles. The man has those cycles. This is the type of order that those within Rastafari hold very important and very sacred in a sense, because that is the order that they know is reflected in nature and thus reflected within themselves. So keeping an order within your life is important as a Rasta man or a Rasta woman, because it will help you live your life to the most effective way possible. So everything that Rastas try to do, they try to do it within a set order. Even when they play the drums, they have what's called, the Naibingi drum, we have what's called a 1-2 order. Okay? So it's It's a set way of playing the drums so that everyone can keep to a harmony and to a positive frequency. All right? So let's move across that. So we had 1 was love, 2 was I-tal, or what we call vital or natural. 3 was militancy. 4 was order. Number 5, core tenet of Rastafari is Ethiopia first. Okay, now when we refer to Ethiopia, we're not talking about the geopolitical state that you see called Ethiopia right now. And for those who don't know, and I'll do a further reasoning on this flag is older than the current Ethiopian's geopolitical state that you see right now existing in Africa. This flag is an ancient flag and is spoken about in some of the oral traditions, like within Moses and within Noah, when he saw the rainbow, and that is spoken about within the ancient Ethiopian tradition. Okay, you're not going to find information out like that within the contemporary understanding of what Ethiopia is all about. You have to go to Ethiopia and talk to those people who understand the ancient tradition to understand what is meant by Ethiopia. So we're not talking about Ethiopia, the geopolitical state. At one point in time, what we call now the continent of Africa, as well as the oceans that were between Africa and what we now call the Americas, which were much smaller at that time, was called Ethiopia. The whole thing was called Ethiopia. Okay, so that's what we're referring to when we talk about Ethiopia. We're talking about Africa, not that small country that's there. So Ethiopia is a very important very important foundational tenet of Rastafari. And Ethiopia and Africa are used interchangeably. Okay? So let's get on to number 6. Education. Number 6. The 6th core tenet of Rastafari is education. Rasta people hold education as not only something that's very important, but it's something that is critical. And we'll find out later on when I share another tenet of Rastafari. When you go into His Majesty's Selected Speeches, okay, which is a book that was put out by the Ethiopian World Federation, was put out by the Imperial Ethiopian Ministry of Information and then republished by members of the Ethiopian World Federation in more modern times. His Majesty has 3 chapters with many speeches just on education alone. One of my favorite little passages that I read, it's not long, about education to show the importance of education to Rastafari, says this. So His Majesty says, what we desire for our people in future consists of 3 main objectives. Okay, this is from a speech entitled General Education, okay, which was delivered the speech is on, he's opening a teacher training center. Okay, His Majesty's opening a teacher training center, delivered in 1962. So His Majesty says, His Imperial Majesty says, what we desire for our people in future consists of 3 main objectives. First, that every Ethiopian may be spared from illiteracy. Okay, so when he talks about Ethiopians, Rasta people take that to mean themselves. So Ethiopians at home and abroad. Second, that through the development of his own inborn capabilities, he may become not a liability but an asset to his nation and a benefit to himself, to his neighborhood, and to his country. And third, that he must ripen and mature in knowledge and education and pass them on to posterity. So right there, Rastafari himself is showing the importance of education for Ethiopians at home and abroad. Critical importance to Rasta people. So let's move on because I don't want to make the video too long. Okay, so we talked about love, I-tal, militancy, order, education, and Ethiopia. So we're going to move on to number 7. All right. Number 7 core tenet is spirituality. Now, when we talk about spirituality, we must not confuse it with religion, because Rastafari, within his own works and within his own travel, showed that religion is personal. Okay, but what's more important is spirituality. Now, quick note, there's a speech out there that people attribute to Rastafari, Haile Selassie I, about spirituality. And most authorities on his words and on his works state that that speech is not his true words. It's someone else who's come up with some words or used the words of someone else and attributed to His Imperial Majesty. Nevertheless, for Rasta people, looking at the life and liberty of His Imperial Majesty and the life and liberty and culture of Ethiopia, okay, of Africa in general, we know that as African people, spirituality is very important. What do we mean by spirituality? It means understanding that you have an inborn connection with the divine, with the Creator, okay, that doesn't need a separate medium, aka religion, to connect you to it. Okay, so that spirituality is of prime importance to Rastafari, and that it was that spirituality that the people within Jamaica who were under such oppression used to connect themselves with Africa, with Ethiopia, without the power of the information age that we have today. That then they were able to use Rastafari as a way to uplift themselves. Okay, so spirituality is a very important 7th tenet of Rastafari. Number 8, development. Again, within his speeches and within the works of His Imperial Majesty, development was a key part of what he was trying to do for Ethiopia specifically, but Africa in general and black people around the world. Okay, so when we talk about development, we're talking about physical development as well as inner development, hence the importance that he placed on education. He has many speeches on development and what His Majesty called modern Ethiopianism, which is to say adopting the practices and principles of modern technology, modern information, modern communication, modern education, and applying it and syncing it with our traditions so that we can uplift our nations, our people. Okay, so at one point in time you used to hear some people say burn book, okay, or burn the books, and that's not Rasta. Now, burn certain books, sure, but Rasta believes in development, Rasta believes in education, and the two go hand in hand. Okay, number 9, a very important tenet of Rastafari is kinship. Okay, kinship. So you'll see this. Within His Majesty's works, he traveled around the world and he met with specific people. He met with people within Europe, but he also met with a lot of people within the Southern Hemisphere, including the leaders of India, the leaders within the North American native people, the indigenous tribes, okay? That kinship amongst people. When you go to Ethiopia, in fact, when you go to Africa in general, East Africa in particular, whether it's Egypt, Ethiopia, those places, when people greet, they hug and they kiss cheeks or they touch cheeks together. That's reflection of the importance of the kinship that's critical within Rastafari. Hence why when Rasta people see themselves, we should greet each other also as brothers and sisters to reflect that same kinship, because that's the only way that we're going to have unity. Okay, remember the principle of I within people, okay, within our people. Okay, so let's move on to the 10th core tenet. The 10th core tenet is royalty. Okay, very important core tenet. It was Rastafari who was crowned king, okay, and then coronated as emperor in a dual coronation with his empress at that time, okay, Empress Menen, who brought to the world a new understanding of what was possible for African people, specifically people that were abroad, like the people that were in Jamaica at that time, who were oppressed, who had come out of slavery and were at the bottom of the barrel. And so during that time of the coronation in 1930, it allowed people, oppressed people, black people within the West, including in America and the Caribbean, to realize that they also were royalty. They also were kings and queens that had been taken out of Africa as prisoners of war and enslaved and had been put at the bottom of the barrel, and they could then raise themselves up, at least spiritually and mentally, within that understanding of seeing themselves as royalty. Okay? So understanding oneself and understanding the concept of royalty, kings and queens, okay? Hence why Rasta will say, this is our crown, yes, the crown chakra. Hence why Rasta will refer to their wives as queens or empress, and themselves as kings, and their children as princes, okay? Trying to deal with that mental slavery and that brainwashing that has gone on. That tenet is very important for raising our Rasta people up, okay? So, royalty, that's number 10. Along with royalty is a very important and deep topic of what we call sovereignty, okay? Now, sovereignty relates to self-determination, okay? Sovereign nation. So, His Majesty put a lot of emphasis on sovereignty. How did he do this? For example, the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, which was before that was called the Oriental Orthodox Church, they were combined with the Coptic Church. He established the Ethiopian Orthodox Church as a sovereign entity, meaning operating on its own, standing on its own, self-determined and stated on its own, okay? During the World War II, when Italy attempted to occupy Ethiopia, His Majesty fiercely defended the sovereignty of Ethiopia, okay? So for Rasta people, sovereignty, self-determination, which was also spoken about highly by Marcus Garvey, is critical. This is one of the most important tenets within Rastafari. Yes, we might exist within these communities, like here I'm in London, I'm in the United Kingdom, but I as an individual recognize myself as a sovereign individual. So the term I from that is used by Rastafari people represents that sovereignty, okay? The I represents you, the I and the second I represents the creation around you, your brothers, your sisters, your community, okay? You are sovereign unto yourself. We might be in this world, but we're not of this world. So that is very important, because once you have that within your mind, it frees your mind from the mental slavery of people trying to connect you to things that are not of you, okay? So the sovereignty, the I concept is very important, okay? So let's look at the core tenet, number 12. I don't want to spend too much time on it, because each one of these core tenets, in reality, I could do, hours long videos on just those particular tenets by themselves. All right? So, number 12, core tenet of Rastafari is the honor and respect for the African woman, the Ethiopian woman, the queen, the daughter, the mother of civilization. Now, let's deal with this. This is an ancient concept. Within Ethiopian tradition, remember, we're not talking about the geopolitical Ethiopia. We're talking about the ancient overstanding of Ethiopia, okay, which is Africa. The Mother Nature is Ethiopia. That is represented today in the flesh, within physical, by the African woman. Within her DNA, within her womb, within that treasure trove that we call her ovary and her eggs, are represented the long lineage of the mother of creation, of Mother Nature. And for those that don't know, it is the flag of Ethiopia, the red, the gold and green, or the green, gold and red, that represents Ethiopia. This flag, the banner, the green, gold and red, represents Ethiopia, and Ethiopia represents the mother. They are one in the same, the black woman. Okay, people need to understand that. And within the center of the flag, around the flag, you have the mother, and in the center of the flag, you have the Lion of Judah, which represents the spirit of the king. Okay, but it's important to understand that it's the mother, the Ethiopia, which is the foundation around from which the king operates. Okay, and so the respect and honor for the black woman is penultimate within Rastafari. Highly important. And these are some of the reasons why Rastafari and understanding the core tenets of Rastafari are useful for our young people, because it teaches them things like the respect for themselves, but also for their sisters, their mothers, and ultimately the earth itself, which right now within modern times people are realizing how the earth is under so much stress. Okay, so let's move on to number 13, the last one. 13 is a very significant and sacred number within the supreme mathematics. So the last important tenet of Rastafari, okay, we've had love, one perfect love, the fire, the truth. We've had I-tal, which is vital, which is natural. We've had militancy, okay. Connected to that, we had order, we had education, we had Ethiopia first, meaning Africa. We had then spirituality, okay. We had development. We had kinship, which is the brotherly and sisterly love. We had royalty. Then we had sovereignty, okay. And then finally at 12 we had the honor for the woman, for the mother, Mother Nature, the Ethiopian queen. Number 13, core tenet of Rastafari is repatriation, okay. If not physically, at least mentally and spiritually. What does repatriation refer to? It means returning home. And this is embodied within all of Africa. All of Africa has this principle. Within Ghana, within the Adinkra tradition, you will hear it referred to as Sankofa. Okay, Sankofa. That you must look back in order to know where you're going from. You must return in order to know where you're going. Okay, so Sankofa, or repatriation, okay? That is a vital and important tenet of Rastafari, and is one of the key things that distinguished that movement from many of the other Afrocentric movements that were encountered during those times of the 50s and 60s and the 70s. The call to return to Africa, at least, if not physically, at least mentally and spiritually. And how does the Rastafari people do that? They do that within the way that they live. They do that within the way that they dress. They do that within the way that they eat. And of course, for some people who have made the ultimate move, they've actually moved physically and returned back to the continent of Africa where they can live their life. So, to close, those were 13 of the core tenets of Rastafari. Some of you might want to add your own, some of you might have a different understanding of it. Remember, we're looking at it from the roots, foundational Rastafari, because that's what I deal with, David Roots, not at these new age modern contexts that you might see within the media or within the movies or even within individuals themselves who don't have a clear understanding and who have not connected and been in touch practically and realistically and sat down with those elders of Rastafari and had foundational reasonings from those times. Okay? Why is it important? It's important that our young people have access to the information that we control the narrative for, so that they can have that spark lit by us and not by a lot of these folly, negative, what we call within Rasta, Babylonian ways and techniques and strategies that they are trying to trap the young people within today. Hence why the earth itself is undergoing so much turmoil. So enough said, it's something I could go on and on about. This is Dr. David Roots, the Roots Chemist, saying to you, Rastafari, give thanks for listening. Yes.